Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the October 16th MVP tag meeting. I'm Ben Omura, chair, and we have a fair amount of people on the call, tag members, and then we have some other folks attending as well. So let's go ahead and take roll.
Ben Omura.
Here.
Justin Borgo. He indicated he could not, this time and date would not work for him. Steve Hart. Janice Goucher.
Here.
Ray Shipman. Laura Gloyd.
Here.
Shailesh Desai.
Here.
Ted Clifton indicated this date and time would not work for him also. Ken Nelson. Ian Casey.
Here.
Bill Masaki.
Here.
Steve Simpson.
Here.
Brad McCutcheon. Harpreet Sandhu.
We were
Dwell.
just in another
Oh.
meeting, so he's probably coming on in a second here.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see him in the guest list. So
Brad or Harpreet?
Sandy.
Sandy.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Kevin Duell. Alexandra Boris.
Here.
Jonathan Jones. David Price.
Here. And Steve Hart is also going to be joining us if you called his name already.
I did. Steve. Yeah. Is he here now or not?
This is Steve Hart. I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we do have a quorum.
Great, fantastic. Is there anyone else on the call that would like to introduce themselves?
My name is David McGee. I'm with the Earthquake Valve Company.
Thanks, David. Elizabeth.
Yes, I'm Elizabeth Torsky. I'm with Cascade Natural Gas. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. So we have a quorum. Let's move on to item 2 of the agenda, which is to review and approve the agenda as shown here. I think this is all the items on it. So any discussion from tag members or other folks on the call regarding the agenda today?
Move for approval.
See, it's Bill, it sounds like you put a motion in. Is there a second for that? And then Matthew, I'll call on you.
Second.
Okay. Dave. Right, so motion on the table. Matthew, was your question regarding the motion for the agenda or other comments on the agenda?
I missed the chance to introduce myself. Why don't you complete the motion?
Okay, we'll come back to that. All right. All right. Great. So the motion is to approve the agenda as written. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Hi.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Matthew, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm participating today as a representative of Renew Air. We manufacture energy recovery ventilators. There's a number of good things on the agenda related to that. I've been involved with our company for 30 years. I'm pretty familiar with the codes and testing and certification programs, both HVI and AHRI. I am vice chair of the U.S. Market Development Subcommittee at HVI, but I'm not speaking on HVI's behalf today. Simply because we haven't had, we became aware of one of these issues only 2 days ago. So the organization hasn't been able to due process to bring position, but I hope to be able to contribute today. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, thank you. All right, okay, let's move on to item 3, which is to review and approve the minutes from the June 27 meeting. Any discussion as we page through these on the minutes that were published as part of this meeting?
This is Steve. I make a motion to approve the minutes as shown here.
Bill for second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion for approval of the minutes as written? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as written, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Great, thank you. Okay, so it looks like we can get into the main part of the meeting today, which is to review code change proposals that were submitted. I submitted several based on some items that have been discussed when we were reviewing the previous state amendments and 2024 IMC draft. And I guess we can start with one of those here. And this is for both IMC and IFGC, looking at the failure to comply section, where Krista, I believe there's previously a state amendment for both of these that had changed the language of authority having jurisdiction to code official. And then this was proposing changing it back to bring it in line with other codes and just how the tag felt that this section should apply. So, and I guess context for the code change proposals, I think we're here to discuss them, suggest improvements, and then provide recommendations for the MVP committee and State Building Code Council to approve them or otherwise deal with them. That being said, so yeah, I'll open it up for comments here. Does anyone have any comments regarding the proposed change or the current status of these two code sections?
Yeah, this is Steve Hart here. I'm looking at this proposal here, 114.4 failure to comply. What's the substantiation that's relative to that particular request for an amendment or revised work, where I'm looking at the 2024, and I don't even see that in the code itself.
So my understanding is currently you're looking at the 2024 like model code IMC, Steve?
No, the IFGC.
IFGC. So it should be just make sure the sections are correct. But the model code language should be what you're seeing with the failure to comply section, and then referencing authority having jurisdiction.
But that's already in the 2024.
Correct. And the intent of this is that there's a 2021 state code change amendment that changed the language of authority having jurisdiction to code official for the Washington state codes.
Okay, I understand that, but the 2021 doesn't even identify that particular, unless that's an amendment, in which it's not.
It might be the 2021 section might be a different number because they changed around some of the numbering. Krista, do you recall what section that is in 2021?
Not off the top of my head. I know in the mechanical code, it changed section numbers a couple of times. I thought it was fairly consistent for the fuel gas code, though.
Shailesh?
Can we accept this as a model code adaptation instead of our code change proposal?
It would have to be a code change proposal to undo a previous code change proposal.
So the-
Even if model code changes or yeah, if they
The
change
model
it,
code did not change in this section.
okay, so it's not one.
Okay.
In
All
the
right.
24, it doesn't exist, if it's under 116. Let me just confirm that it's in 116, because it's out of 116.4 in the 2021 code, and it does say authority having jurisdiction in the 2021. So I'm gonna look at the 2024 and just see, well, I don't see it, so in the 2024, it is 114.4, and it still says authority having jurisdiction.
So make
Right,
sure.
it was a state amendment to change authority having jurisdiction to code official. And this proposal is putting it back to authority having jurisdiction.
Okay.
Removing the previous code change or state amendment.
Okay, all right, I understand what is being driven here. Okay, I don't object to that. Thank you for informing.
No problem. Okay, yeah, any other thoughts for this section or other suggestions on how we might be able to move forward on it? And then Krista, I guess, could you remind us of kind of what the action we would be doing here if we were to entertain a motion to accept the proposal as written and recommend forwarding on to committee or council?
Right, you're recommending that the council adopt the proposed code change or not adopt the proposed code change or modify the proposed code change. So in this case, it would be to adopt or accept the proposed change.
Mr. Chair, this is Steve Simpson. I move to accept the code change that's in front of us, which would also basically eliminate the state amendment too, correct? Which is one of the roles of this committee, is to limit the amount of state amendments. Does that also go into the motion, Krista? I can't remember.
Sure, that can.
Okay, that is my motion.
This is Bill, I'll second that.
Okay, you have a motion and a second to recommend accepting the code change proposal as it's shown. All right, any discussion with that motion? All right, hearing none, take a voice vote. All in favor of accepting the code change proposal for these sections for IMC and IFGC, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries. Great. Okay, so let's keep going. Number 2 on the list is some proposed changes to the IFGC. And David, you introduced yourself earlier. Maybe you could provide a brief summary of the proposed change here.
Before we get into that, I
Oh,
just
sorry.
wanted to mention that I took those three and condensed them down into one proposal so we can kind of look at everything all together.
Got it. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for clarifying that. I saw that, and I saw that the links all went to the same document for those three. if anyone else was trying that.
And if anybody's interested, I did copy over all the information into this one proposal, but we do still have the 3 original proposals if somebody'd like to look at them that way, or if you go back to the large chart that was posted for the council meeting, they're individual on that one as well.
Great. Great, thank you. David, would you be willing to go through these proposed changes?
Yeah, the proposed changes or additions is for the definition of seismic valves to so in section 404.21, the seismic valves, they're just identifying the following proposal. They're identifying the device for the natural gas shutoff valves.
All right, so this has like an added definition for the seismic valve itself, and then the additional section in 404.21, which I guess that would just be added onto that within that 404 section.
Correct.
To require the these seismic valves within the piping system. And can you give us a little bit more information on how these valves work? Benefit of the tag here?
Yeah, what they do is they automatically shut off the natural gas supply to a facility or building in the case of a 5.4 or greater earthquake, preventing gas leaks and explosions and subsequent fires that follow.
I guess one question I had is following a seismic event or the activation of the valve, what is the typical process to reset the valve to allow for fuel to flow again?
So they're a manual knob on the side that resets the internal valve, and but before we would provide, well, it should be provided instructions that either PSC or a licensed plumber come out to check for leaks by doing a pressure test on the system to make sure that there's no gas leaks inside whatever facility is there. But so after a seismic event of 5.4 or greater where it shuts off, it's recommended that, you know, they inspect for leaks so that there aren't potential leaks that leak into the building after the earthquake.
Thank you. Shailesh.
This valve needs to be approved. It says an approved seismic valve. So, or is it per standard? That means it is made, we don't need another level of approval.
I might be able to speak to that. This is Anthony Bradley. I also jumped on with David from the Earthquake Valve Company. The valves are approved nationwide for use, and they go through a pretty stringent process. There's a few manufacturers that are, you know, nationally approved and ANSI approved.
Great. And yes, I guess the ANSI standard mentioned would be the typical listing requirement for these types of valves.
Yes.
Steve.
Hi, this is Steve Hart. I read the subsequent documents that are related to this proposal to amend, but it's not an amend, it's really a new section. This doesn't exist in the current 2021 nor in the 2024 as a requirement. However, other areas of the country do have similar language that, like in California, Title 24, that do go out of their way to express the requirement for these types of valves. The language in this document is, in my opinion, overreaching substantially. I do not read any in the substantiation the rationale specific to our industry as a whole, meaning that those that are most effective have not been incorporated into this process as, you know, stakeholders, specifically the Seattle Restaurant Alliance, master builders, public health preparedness, Washington State emergency preparedness, nor is there any determined timeline when this is required. It's just being proposed as a requirement. How many years down the road do we track this? In fact, the tracking is unfunded. That's an unfunded mandate. Nor is there any substantiation in this defining how many 5.4 or greater earthquakes have occurred in Seattle in the last 1 decade, 2, 5, 10 decades, or as far back as we can obtain data for seismic movements. I'm not in favor of this. And I don't think that the industry is going to be favorable either. I read the costs associated with the installments. I don't know if that's going to be practical when you start telling everybody you have a drop dead or a sunset date of this time frame to get this done. When that happens, time is limited, resources are limited, and costs go up. When you're talking about large organizations that have multiple stakeholding facilities that have gas, you're talking about a substantial cost increase, not in a singular, and specifically where you have a small restaurant somewhere that operates using gas, that cost is going to get passed on down. Not every owner is going to say, oh, now I have a mandate. Okay, I'll do that, but I'll just cost that out to my tenant. So the downstream effect is significant in addition to the cost in general. So I oppose this for all of the reasons that I say, from the stakeholders not being substantiated in the substantiation to the lack of analysis and cost to the fact that there's no sunset dates that are representing when this to be completed by. But overall, this is a good amendment, but it's not purposefully identified, in my opinion, to the point of accepting. So I would not accept it, but I would say that it is something that is worth definitely addressing, provided that enough substantiation could be delivered, requiring this earthquake valve, but that it not be retroactive at all. You're just asking for a lot of costs that smaller organizations to larger organizations are going to oppose and basically knock it off the rails entirely. I do believe that it could be something that could be modified to the point where new installations of gas systems be proposed in this manner. And that is something I think I could probably get behind, provided that there was enough addresses to my comments. And I believe that it's something that others could get behind in that capacity. So those are my comments regarding the requirement for seismic valves, and I'll leave the floor to others.
Thank you, Steve. Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of build on Steve's comment. I haven't done a thorough review of this one, but how it would pertain to new and existing installations of gas service lines. I think there's a lot of stakeholders that still need to be consulted about how this would impact them. Steve touched on a lot of those, and I would like to do a little more research internally with Northwest Natural. I know we see a lot of them out there, but just to get some more feedback on their operation and experience in the field before entertaining a motion to adopt something like this.
Great. Thanks, Ian. David, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear. So this is my first time introducing any sort of proposal change. But the reason why I made it as general as I did was because I wanted to give the council the flexibility to adjust the scope as needed. I didn't know if the code council was going to look at it, evaluate it, and say, hey, this is a good idea. Let's go ahead and apply it to what we think is reasonable. I know there's a lot of people in here that have written a lot of code change proposals, and they know all the ins and outs, but I thought it was a valid point and an important thing for our communities to be protected, especially like elderly care facilities, child care facilities, large industrial buildings that have a lot of employees, things such as that. So I wasn't trying to just, ramrod something through. I wanted to make it generalized so that the right people could address the most vulnerable at risk.
Yep, and that's exactly why we're here today. So thank you for saying that. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Ben, I don't have a copy of the 2024 code, and I'm curious on the application of the seismic valves. Are these assigned to specific seismic zones only?
So what we're seeing here is a brand new section that's being proposed. So this doesn't exist in the 2024 model code right now.
So it's across the board then, even if you're in a seismic zone 0, then this would be applicable, right?
Right. As it's written currently, that may be the case. And so yeah, I think as we discuss this more, it might be beneficial to look at having a work group or something like that to talk about this in more detail. But we can keep discussing a little bit more here. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I think they're good common sense devices. I would just like to see them targeted to the areas that are going to be needed. I don't see anything here that makes it retro, that we end up putting in amendments all the time where unless there's a life safety issue with a building, we don't go back and start remodeling buildings based on every code change. And for, life safety stuff, hey, buildings don't catch on fire, but there are a ton of fire alarms, fire exits, corridor widths, the whole deal, that never see a fire. So I think that, I think it's a great idea. I think we just need to target it where it's needed and make sure everybody understands. You don't have to go back and start pulling apart every gas system where it is applicable.
Yeah, and I guess one thing to look at is that the changes that were collected into this one, there's also another proposal that's, I believe, related to this in 24 GP133. So that would be the next one we're looking at, but that does have some more language in it that would require retroactive changes as well as devices for new installations. Steve, but
We'll say Steve Hart.
Steve
Okay.
Hart. Yeah, sorry, I'm
Steve's
we
here.
have multiple
Hey,
Steves. Thank you.
So I just want to say, hey, look, David, thank you very much for participating in this tag and proposing this amendment or new section, excuse me. And no one's here to, dismantle your work, but we're all professionals here and we try to input what we believe is the right approach. So please don't be offended by people's actions or words here. Just know that you're in a group of professionals and we all start out the same way as engaging. So please keep moving forward with what you're proposing. I think it just needs to be looked at a little bit closer, but I do see value in it, like the previous person identified that it does have merit. So maybe not retroactively. I think the industry would be very objectionable to that, but I do believe we have possibility going forward. But on the same proposal, as far as fuel gas is concerned inside of a structure during an event or a non-event, some things make even more functionality, like that being a natural gas detector. whether an earthquake valve is installed or not. Movements that are less than an earthquake valve that could cause a leak in a gas system, and unaware of that leak, could be detected through a natural gas detector. So I mean, and just, trying to apply a little bit more common sense into this approach, that, it's not always just about an earthquake. It's about other things that happen downstream from minor movements and settlements and strains and stresses on pipes, or the aging of a system. So there's other approaches that can, identify natural gas within a structure that could limit a fire, and a natural gas detector is one of those. Thank you for letting me make my comments.
Thank you, Steve. Steve Simpson.
Yeah, my comment is to you, Ben. I know we're looking at this first one, and from what Krista said earlier, and I could be wrong, but there's 3 components to this particular that are all kind of linked together. Is that right, Ben?
So what Krista's done here is, I believe, Krista, you've combined kind of the first 3 of these into this single code change proposal that we're seeing here. And then there's also another one that I believe is related, that is 24 GP 133. So when we refer to like the 3 that got combined, you're seeing all of that here right now, is my understanding.
Okay. But yeah, we're only seeing part of the first page. I guess, Ben, what I would suggest maybe to you as the chair is, let's look at the whole thing. Look at all the parts of it instead of just the one first piece of it, so that we get the whole picture and then open it up for comment, because we can see the whole thing, once again, whether it's retroactive, whether it's specific seismic zones, whether, it just so that we see the whole picture, and then we make better discussion possibly, or it's the same process, because I haven't, to be quite honest, I haven't looked at this whole component yet, and so I'm seeing this for the first time. So that might be helpful, Ben. Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess, yeah, we can. So right now we're seeing kind of the proposed language changes to the code, and then section 5 and below in the code change proposal document provides kind of explanation here that David and the organization has written for the proposal. And then the following sections are looking at additional criteria and economic impacts that would be considered. So these are all kind of template sections of the proposal form here, and proponents are supposed to fill out the applicable sections to provide information and justification.
Thank you, Ben.
Yep. All right. Yeah, and yeah, of course, all of these are posted, so feel free to look at those on the side, as we have a portion of it on the screen, of course. Shailesh, go ahead.
If not retroactively to all buildings, it can be applied to building undergoing substantial alterations. And only in that case, of course, all the new buildings may require, as this proposal says, but going back to existing building, only building going through substantial alteration, that would be not a bad idea. Thank you.
Thanks, Shailesh. Steve, your hand's still up. You still have another comment? Steve Simpson. Right. Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not understanding the difference between the 3, 24 GP 1030 31 and 32. They look to be the same to me. Is there supposed to be a difference between those 3?
The original proposals had new definition of seismic valve as one of the proposals, the new section of 404.21 as a second proposal, and adding the new standard chapter 8 as the third proposal. So this just combines all three of them into one document.
Okay, got it. Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate that.
Right. And maybe, Krista, it might be helpful to look at 33 as well, if we could pull that up. And I guess a question to David maybe is, was the intent for, I guess, all four of the overall proposed changes to be incorporated together?
Yeah, it was intended for it to be looked at all together. And as far as the new and buildings undergoing, a large renovation or something like that, I used literature, or I used verbiage from California to try to bring it up here into this building code or the fuel code. And so I just want everyone to know, my intention wasn't to make it mandatory for every single facility. The way I worded it was because California used that wording, but I wanted the Building Code Council to be able to evaluate it and say, this makes sense in these certain fault areas, like the Seattle fault zone or the Tacoma fault zone, and be able to apply it in that way.
Got it. Right. Thank you. Right. So this is the GP 133, which has some additional proposed added language here. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious if we're, maybe hesitant on some of this language in the actual proposal in the 400 sections for the requirements of a seismic valve. Would there be any merit to maybe moving forward with only the definitions and the standards at this point and letting the actual, chapter 4 section be postponed until it's kind of written a little bit better, or do we need to consider these all as one package?
Thanks, Dave. Krista, I don't know if we would be able to partially recommend some pieces of these, but
Yeah, there's not much reason to have a definition and a standard for something that isn't adopted, so it all kind of fits together.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
right, Bill.
Yeah, Ben, I had a question for the proposer, David. You mentioned that this was similar to what is being used in California. In that code, are the seismic zones identified?
I'm not entirely sure which zones are applied to. I know the entire city of Los Angeles. They kind of designate high-risk areas with older buildings and like schools and government facilities and things like that. But I didn't get into the details of which zones they used. It was just a generalized Los Angeles City to implement these in new buildings and when buildings are being altered or changed.
Right, yeah. I'd be looking for a specific zone where this is going to start. Is it, going to be C, D, and E, D and E? Because then we have that information within the IRC and the IBC as well to draw upon.
If I could just chime in, I don't know how to raise my hand on here, so I apologize. But in our region, the concern, more so than the Seattle fault lines, Tacoma fault lines, and Squally, fault zones, is the overarching Cascadia subduction zone, and what geologists are stating to us is that there's going to be the kind of earthquake that only happens once every few hundred years, that, you know, is the kind of thing that covers our entire region, that would be felt from, you know, Canada to Northern California, something in the 8 to 9.0 range, lasting 4 to 6 minutes. Those are the kind of things that happen when we get a, you know, a full slip on that subduction zone. So, you know, my thought in with regards to if we wanted to limit it to a specific area here in the region, you may look at cross-referencing areas that are prone to liquefaction because of, you know, how they, whether they're, you know, built on fill or how they sit with reference to sea level. Things like that could be something to be cross-referenced to try to determine zone. But the big one that we're concerned about would kind of be, you know, a multi-regional event.
Yeah, in the code, Anthony, we have the zones established, and there's really good maps of the A through E zones that we follow for other different structural requirements. So that information is already there. You know, we're looking at this for a statewide application, and when you get over to the east side, they're not as seismically active over there, and so there's no need to, you know, include these valves in an A or B zone necessarily, where you may want to consider them for the C, D, and E zones, which are largely in Western Washington. So I think that's the part that we need to get in here for statewide application, because the way it's written right now, I think I said before, these are a great idea. I put them in designs and installed these on several large facilities and even residences. But right now, the way it's written, I wouldn't be in favor of letting this go forward.
I fully concur. Yeah, the Eastern Washington is such a low risk area that that makes perfect sense.
Right. Great discussion. I think that there seems to be a lot of hesitancy to potentially recommend approval as written. So I guess would there be folks that would be willing to work with David and Anthony on revising some of the proposed language and coming back at the next tag meeting, or discuss it at a future committee meeting potentially on what we would recommend in terms of changes, and then bring it back to the tag for motion and final vote of approval.
Yeah, Ben, this is Bill. I'd be willing to do that.
Yeah, he
Bill?
and Casey at Northwest Natural, I'd be interested.
Okay. Billion, anyone else, feel free to think about it and email myself or Krista. And David, good.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate everybody commenting on this new proposal. I was hoping that there was going to be some guidance from this the building code council or everyone that comes to these tag meetings, because I think it's an important safety measure that we can take, and it's low cost. But I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just saying I appreciate everyone that's willing to work with me and help to refine this proposal so that it makes sense for everyone. So thank you.
Thanks, David. Krista, do we need a motion to kind of table this for additional discussion and review, or should we just move on to the next proposal?
Well, a motion to table would probably be the cleanest.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Steve Simpson. I provide a motion to table.
All right, Steve. Is there a
Bill
second?
for a second.
All right. Motion and second. Any additional discussion to table these two code change proposals? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to the next one, number 4. So this is one I submitted following discussion at the tag on reviewing model code changes that included a revised definition of balanced ventilation system, and I guess the discussion and kind of explanation here is that this is a definition that's exclusively used by the model code, where the Washington State amendments strike out the sections where that's used in. So right now we're not really using that definition, and it seems like it would be confusing to have an additional definition for something that sounds similar to how we define whole house balanced ventilation. So the proposed change would just be to strike out the model code definition here. All right. Anyone have any thoughts for this change proposal?
Ben, this is Matthew. I have a question.
Go ahead.
A moment ago, I thought I heard you say that you have amendments that define whole house balanced ventilation systems. But here on the screen, I see just whole house ventilation systems.
So, there's a couple state amendments for the definitions.
I apologize. I wasn't able to drill that down to that amendment. My broader question is the code calling for or identifying balanced ventilation systems under any circumstances?
Yes. So for Washington State, as part of the 2018 code cycle, there's a new section, chapter 4 of the IMC, that was introduced to require a balanced whole house ventilation system for residential occupancies.
Okay, so in other words, there is a definition for that, and this one is duplicative, and you want to get rid of this duplicative one. Do I understand?
Correct. Yep, that's the intent.
Sounds perfect. Thank you.
Right, Laura.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I remember talking about this, and this is consistent with what I remember, and that we don't need, and we don't actually want this definition in, at least reference. It just seems to be clear to strike this out, so I would be in support of this.
Great. Allie?
I agree with Laura. I remember this conversation, and I think having clarity and not including this definition that's slightly different and perhaps less accurate would be good. I approve of this.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else have any thoughts or questions? Okay. Anyone want to propose a motion to approve or otherwise take action on this proposal? Laura?
I'll make a motion to accept the code change proposal as written.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second from Ally. Motion is second. Any additional discussion regarding this code change proposal? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of recommending accepting the code change proposal as shown here, please say aye.
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 All right, any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, number 5. So, and no, Eric emailed Krista and myself that he was not able to attend today, but he did provide a brief statement regarding the code change proposals. So we can look at those if there's any additional questions. All right, there's a comment there. Thanks. Yeah, so it looks like this one is editorial change regarding the placement of an exception to the parking garage intake location. So I don't know like when it kind of got moved down there, but at some point the exception regarding parking garage intake got kind of bumped down to the end of 401.4. And I believe we discussed this during the tag review as well earlier, but this proposed changes to move that exception at the bottom there into the exceptions that are under item 2. So the idea being that this would pertain to parking garages, and it kind of makes sense to have it there. All right, I saw a thumbs up from Laura. Anyone else have any comments regarding this proposed change? Right. Anyone want to make a motion regarding this proposed change? Laura.
I'll make a motion to accept the code change proposal as written.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Holly, second. All right. Any discussion? Any thing you want to say regarding this, Laura, or others? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the code change proposal and recommending adoption, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yeah. All right. All right. This is another one from that I put in regarding combined inlet outlet fittings. So looks like Eric had a editorial comment in here. So the proposed change here, as we discussed during the tag review of the model code changes, was that the model code changed the word appliance to fan manufacturer for these factory built intake exhaust combination fittings that are typically used with ERV devices. And the tag discussion was that it didn't really make sense to identify a fan manufacturer, as many times the fans are integral to the ERVs, and it would make more sense to either revert back to the previous language of appliance or something less specific than the fan manufacturer. So that is what the proposed change is doing here. Any comments regarding this proposed change? Laura. Good.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, again, I remember talking about that and the, using that terminology appliance makes better sense, so I support the change.
So Laura, Dave. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious. I remember having this discussion too, and appliance makes a lot more sense than fan. But I was just thinking, if we struck appliance and just had manufacturer's instructions, would there be any reason to add anything prior to that to make it clear? I mean, are we adding clarity, or are we just adding a word? I guess is my question.
Right, and yeah, I guess with that, you think that would shift the definition from potentially the appliance itself or the combination termination fitting? And I guess maybe Matthew, since you're on and I don't know how much experience you have with these devices in particular, but I don't know if you would be able to provide any comment for this.
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that. I was real comfortable with the appliance manufacturers, using appliance. Typically, I mean, from one perspective, let's say it's, that's going to be an energy recovery ventilator. And in my opinion, it's kind of up to the ventilator manufacturer to determine that the termination system meets that 10% requirement. I'm perfectly open to just taking appliance, taking the fan and appliance, just taking out fan. So
And just leaving it to say with the manufacturer's instructions.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that allows it to be either the manufacturer of the termination or of the appliance. I think that that's okay. I have another comment on the next sentence, but if you want to kind of come to a conclusion on whether to replace or simply delete the word fan.
Sure. I guess, yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts regarding if even we should have the term appliance included?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Patrick.
Yeah, this is Pat Nielsen with Brown. I guess I tend to agree with Matt's thoughts that I don't know that we need either word. If you're in the section talking about ERVs, I don't think you need either one really.
I don't really have any strong opinions either way.
I will say that you make mention of Actually 62.2, section 6.6. In that section, they simply use they do not modify the word manufacturer.
They just have manufacturer.
Yeah.
In there. Is that correct?
Now I like what you've done because you've added that it should be in accordance with instructions. I think that's good. That's not in 62. I think.
I'm just looking again. Sorry to interject, Ben.
Nope.
There is a definition in the IMC for appliance, which is an energy using device. So that would separate it from the potentially termination fitting by itself if there was any question about which manufacturer's instructions need to be followed. So appliance might be good if we want to clarify that it is the energy using device that we're following the instructions for and not the fitting.
Right. And I guess Matthew and Pat, would you typically see that really the applicable requirements would be driven by the ERV itself or per the combination fitting?
Well, Patrick, it seems to me it's sort of a question of which party takes responsibility for it. I mean, I will say that conceivably, the manufacturer of the termination could have done work to support a statement that recapture is less than 10% at certain airflow rates. And if that isn't incorporated properly in the instructions, wherever the instructions are coming from, which would, I'd say most often would be the ERB manufacturer's instructions, then maybe that chain of not custody, but accuracy might be a little bit threatened. But I don't know. I don't have a problem with the appliance manufacturer's instructions with that word being there. And Pat, what do you think? Probably most ERV manufacturers are handling, maybe not all, the recommendations for the termination.
I think so. I'm trying to remember with our instructions how we talk about that. I guess if the word appliance helps get rid of any ambiguity, if anyone's wondering if you're talking about the ERV or the fitting, I guess it might help clear up that ambiguity.
Right. If we're concerned that we want the ERV manufacturer to take responsibility for confirming that that termination does the job it's supposed to do, then you want that word appliance in there.
Ben,
I guess it could get messy if, you know, you have one manufacturer's ERV and the contractor designer chose to use someone else's fitting. You know, the ERV manufacturer could say, hey, it's not my fault. Someone chose a fitting that, you know, has greater than 10%, you know, recirculation.
Right, thanks. Yeah, thanks for that commentary. Shailesh, and then Teresa, I think I heard you.
Well,
you did. I'm sorry. I just wanted to, I don't know how to raise my hand either. My phone doesn't seem to do it. Very briefly, the one time I commissioned a system that had these combination fittings, the combination fitting itself comes with instructions on how to install it on the outside of the building. And so I would just comment that those instructions and the way that it fits into the siding is pretty important for making sure that the device itself is installed properly and doesn't do the recirculation that's in this definition. So I guess I'm not a voting member, but I would probably vote to not have either of the words. That's all.
Thanks, Teresa. Shailesh, did you want to say something?
yes, it depends on the velocity at which the air is being pushed out. So the appliance manufacturer have better knowledge of what would be the velocity or how strong their fans are. And if they have any concern about a fitting, they can also say that certain type of this recommendation goes with the certain type of combination fitting. Thank you.
Thanks, Shailesh. Okay, so I guess it sounds like we still have a little bit of debate here on to retain the term or not. Does anyone have any additional comments or want to make a motion to recommend modifying the language and accepting it or accepting it as shown?
This is Pat Nielsen again with Brown. I guess the more I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering, because of the issues we have, you know, do you refer to the ERV manufacturer's instructions or the fitting man? I'm wondering if you just take that whole section back out in accordance with manufacturer's instructions.
I'm sort of feeling that way too, again, in that, then if the instructions are in the box, great, follow those instructions. If the instructions are in the ERB installation manual, you follow those. And that should cover it.
All right, Shailesh, go ahead.
If there is no instruction, then what?
Then you got to call me or Pat. Is that fair?
Laura.
I'll make a motion to accept the code change proposal with the modification of striking the word appliance.
Okay, so I guess in that case, the proposal would just be to strike out fan, I guess. That'd be right, Krista.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thanks, Laura. Is there a second?
I'd second that.
Dave? All right, motion is second to recommend accepting the proposal as shown, which would have the language is in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions for this section. Any additional discussion?
Ben, do you want me to bring up my comment on the next sentence?
So
At this
I
point?
guess I think what we're gonna do is go through this motion, and then since the next sentence wasn't, the only item mentioned was the editorial change for the applicable ASHRAE section. If there's other comments you had for the existing code language, we can,
Oh, I
I
see
think
what you're saying.
we can discuss them separately.
I'll withdraw that comment.
Okay. All right. I'll let you speak to it after we go through this thing. All right. Any additional comments for the recommending the code change proposal motion? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? I think I only heard like 2 ayes. So
Sorry, I missed that one. I'll say aye.
okay, thanks. All right. Any opposed to accepting? All right. Hearing none. Motion carries. All right. Matthew, go ahead for any additional comments you had here.
This is real trivial and I won't object if we just blow right by it, but my observation was I'm not sure that the phrase, the already existing phrase, in accordance with ASHRAE 62.2 section 6, should be 6.6 now, exception 4. I'm not sure that adds anything. When you look at unless it's been amended since 2022 printing, what's in ASHRAE 62.2 doesn't add anything, to what you've already required. Just a style point, and it's been there, not doing any harm. So if you don't want to spend time on that now, that's fine with me.
Okay. I mean, if any tag members would like to propose removing that, or maybe treat it as we could look at it as a separate proposal that the tag creates, we could also do that, or we could opt to leave it as is for now. I guess I'll leave it there unless anyone wants to recommend an action for it, and we can.
Sorry,
move
one
on.
more thing. I just saw that 501.3.1.3 doesn't say anything about the 10%. Is that because it's I'm not looking at it in context though.
Yeah, and Yeah, I think the additional section referencing the ASHRAE standard is in the chapter 4 section. I'm not sure why the initial amendment may have not had that, but yeah, I mean, good point. And I would say, like, since it's applicable to the intake provisions in chapter 4, should kind of carry the intent through. But I agree. There's a discrepancy. All right. Any other comments before we move on to the next proposal? All right, let's keep going. Let's see. This is item 7. So I believe this was another item we discussed during the tag review. And I think there was a discrepancy identified in footnote B of table 403.3.1.1. And I believe it is it item 3? Yeah, item 3 of 403.2.1 here. So the section that's shown as being struck out here in the footnote B of table 403.1.1 is allowing for recirculation of air that is clearly contained within the space. Whereas item 3 of 403.2.1 is prohibiting recirculation of any air in that space. And so I guess the proposed change as discussed during the tag would be to bring these two sections into alignment so there's not a discrepancy between these. And Chris, I don't know if we can look at the table so folks can see where this footnote gets applied to. That might be helpful.
Now let's see how long it takes to come up.
Sorry. And I guess, yeah, just we're going through it, like it's noted for spaces like kitchens, parking garages, beauty salons.
Which footnote was it?
Footnote B. All right, Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I remember, there's a footnote B and there's a footnote G. And the footnote B is for spaces that recirculating is prohibited, and areas like smoking lounges and areas that we don't want recirculated back, versus footnote G are spaces where an ERV can be used and, you know, where there's some, like if there's a wheel type ERV, and there's some recirculated air, those particular spaces with a footnote G are, you know, as far as utilizing and exhausting those through an ERV is more suitable. That's what I remember about that. So just wanted to chime in about the difference between the footnote B and G.
Great. Thanks, Laura. Ellie, good.
So from a health standpoint, it does make sense to make sure there's not any confusion about recirculating air that could have constituents that are harmful, like carbon monoxide or particulate matter that's coming from smoking cigarettes. So footnote B being clarified does make sense. And of course there is G, spaces like school laboratories would be under G. So that does, that's not within this prohibition, although we would like to see not having recirculation of that air, having an ERV makes sense too. So yeah, support of this.
Thanks, Ellie. All right, any other questions or discussion for this code change proposal? Anyone would like to entertain a motion to move this forward or otherwise take action? Laura?
I'll make a motion to accept the code change proposal as written.
Ms. Laura, is there a second?
I'd like to second.
Riley, thank you. All right, any additional discussion for this one? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the motion as, or the proposed changes written, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. So this is item 7 or 8, excuse me, GP1 106. And let's see, so this is a code change proposal for allowing for occupied standby operation. So adding the proposed language to section 403.3.1.3 system operation. It's the purple text that's underlined there. And I believe this would be following what ASHRAE 62.1 allows for allowing some ventilation rates to be reduced to zero based on I believe it's occupancy detection. And the comments from Eric that Krista just pasted in is noting that this is not a requirement to do occupied standby, but allows for it if the option is pursued for energy savings. And it's, I think it sounds like there's likely going to be some proposed amendments to the Washington State Energy Code to allow for this as well. So guess the reasoning here was to provide a compliance means in the mechanical code to help support that. Dave.
Just a quick question. I'm not super familiar with ASHRAE 62.1, but having that reference to the table in the code, is that going to be a hindrance for people if they don't have access to that standard, or they're not sure, where to find that table? Or is it common to have ASHRAE callouts in the mechanical code directly?
There are definitely a number of ASHRAE callouts currently, but yeah, I think there's a couple places where it allows for ASHRAE based compliance and refers you to those standards.
Okay, thanks.
Not uncommon, but obviously it's I think it's a balance of either replicating some of that language in the state code or referring to the ASHRAE standard. So it's like, do we want to add more code language to do that and maintain it to keep it up to date with the ASHRAE approach, or just simply refer to the ASHRAE standard?
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, thank you. Any other comments regarding this proposed change and proposed addition? Or anyone want to make a motion for this? Allie,
Thanks. From looking at the table, it looks like these standby spaces that have been identified in the column are spaces where there's not expected to be any sources of contaminants of concern. Places like lecture halls and assembly areas, but also corridors. I'm wondering if anyone who's here today can provide some insight about, if a building has domain control ventilation, is it likely that an area is going to be, the ventilation is going to be returned prior to occupancy, or would it just be when someone walks into the room, the ventilation is returned? I am concerned about, concentration of pollutants sitting overnight and then someone walking into that.
sure. Yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that. And I'm not sure what the energy code provision might look like for this, and if it would still allow for some operation when the system is in could be in occupied standby. But my understanding is that this allows for the system to go to a zero ventilation rate during occupied scheduled times. So when the system is in an unoccupied mode, it could still go to zero per the ventilation code provisions. But this would, yep, good.
I could speak to a couple of examples about how this is being piloted in Washington State.
Yeah, that would be great.
There are a couple of ways you can get a building management system to do this. You can use an occupancy sensor in the space. Obviously, in a corridor, you have to be careful about where you put that occupancy sensor. We are doing it, EcoScope is doing this at a city hall in the Puget Sound, and we put it at the top of the stairwell, occupancy sensors at the top of the stairwells where people have to walk in. And that's what triggers the ventilation to start in that egress hallway. There's also occupancy sensor in something like a city council chamber where you only use that space when there's going to be a city council meeting and one person walks in to turn on the lights and start the microphone. And that's when the ERV starts at the ventilation level for a full city council meeting. So way before you've got 20 or 30 people in that space. There are other ways to do it based on schedules. Other areas of the building go to occupied mode, like Ben was just saying. You know, office hours, when the building is vacant, the ERVs are off. When there's people in the building because it's open to the public, the ERVs are on.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Yeah, so I guess would anyone want to make a motion to approve this or otherwise take action? All right. If not, oh, sorry, Jonathan, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, no, and my understanding is this is not a requirement, but an allowance. It's not like every person has to do this. Particularly, it is an option for installation purposes.
Correct. I believe that's the intent of the proposed change here. As a voluntary approach that's now being allowed for this proposed change.
I
Laura,
would move to.
go ahead. Okay.
I would
Yeah, go
move
ahead.
to further the proposal with discussion.
Okay.
I think that's how it's said.
All right. We got a motion from Jonathan. Is there a second?
So for clarification, Jonathan, were you moving for approval for later discussion at the committee level, or were you moving to table it to discussion later?
I was moving to say, let's go ahead and approve this, but I'm still open for more discussion. I didn't want to cut off the discussion, but I definitely wanted to put on the table that I'm supportive of moving this forward, if I can get a second.
Laura, are you seconding?
I wasn't necessarily gonna second it. I'm just not really super clear why we're looking at this. Just kind of keeping in mind the notion that we're trying to limit the amount of state amendments we're adding. I just am not sure what this is really bringing to the table, so to speak.
Gotcha. All right. Maybe we can have some more discussion, but I think we got a motion on the table, so see if there's a second available for Jonathan's motion. All right. All right. Hearing no second, I think the motion is gonna die for lack of a second here. And yeah, maybe we can bring it back to the discussion. So Laura, I think as Jonathan mentioned, and as Eric had in the comments here, this is allowing for this pathway. I think Teresa kind of explained the application of it, but my understanding is that without this added language, that the ventilation systems would still be having to, like during occupied operation, they would still be having to run at a rate per the typical ventilation requirements. So it's even if for like areas that would have demand control ventilation, they would still only be able to turn down to an area-based rate of ventilation during occupied times. So this would allow for additional energy savings by allowing those systems to go completely off during occupied times when there's not a occupancy detection or other activation.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Okay, so that's at the expense of adding occupancy sensors and other control devices and that sort of thing to get that savings.
Correct. So there,
Okay.
like, there may be something you can receive in terms of achieving higher energy savings, which would help with the energy code compliance pathway or something like that. But again, at the cost of additional detectors and or system complexity on the application side.
Okay.
All right. So I guess, yeah, is there any other requests from the tag? Do we want to reject this proposal or provide additional comments on how it could be revised to be acceptable? Or is it, yeah, like Laura said, is it something that the tag would not recommend adopting to add this additional language? So, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with the language, and I think it makes sense that there's going to be an energy code amendment that goes along with it. But to Laura's point, until then, until we see it, then kind of what comes first, the horse or the cart?
Yeah, unfortunately, us being the cart in this situation, our window for reviewing these is going to likely end before the energy code proposal window opens up, is my understanding of the schedule right now. So we may not have that information before the tag will be required to wrap up review of code change proposals.
Okay. And if this language was not included in this code section, is there some ambiguity or some issue with enforcement that would be problematic? I mean, I guess we kind of don't know until we see the energy code requirements, right?
Yeah, and it may require like there being a alternate means request or a code alternate at a jurisdictional level to handle those requests that don't have local amendments or instructions. Bill, go ahead.
Hey, Ben, I'm curious if we could make an approval contingent on the accompanying energy code revision being approved as well. That window's closing, so just trying to get it done now.
Right, and yeah, Krista, I don't know what you think about that option and how we might be able to propose that. Like, is it something we could include in the upcoming Sierra 102s is kind of pending alignment with energy code?
You could do that. You could also move it forward to the committee with no recommendation and let them know that the tag was unsure what to do with it in the absence of a proposal for the energy code and let them make the determination. It's up to the tag how you want to move forward.
Okay. Laura.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't really have any, strong objections to this. I mean, it says shall, that basically this, the outdoor air flow rates can't, shall be permitted to be reduced to zero. It's not really requiring it, so, I don't really have any, objections to it. So I just want to throw that out there that it seems like you know, it kind of gives the, it does give the, you know, the designers, you know, an option to do that, maybe to, you know, design their system in that manner. I don't, you know, we don't really know what will be happening with the energy code, but, you know, I don't really see anything, any real, you know, reason why this shouldn't, you know, I mean, there's nothing real, objectionable about that. So I just wanted to mention that in thinking about it a little bit further, it seems okay to me, you know, if we want to, you know, if we want to, you know, write this in, I don't think it's anything, real objectionable, so.
All right, great. So, Ally, go ahead.
I agree. I think I just want to make sure that this is used judiciously and, you know, following recommendations through the energy code so that it's not used in spaces where, you know, concentrations of contaminants are allowed to accumulate and then they're not sufficiently removed before occupancy. It sounds from the examples that were given earlier that, you know, this can be used well to eliminate energy use that's not needed. Certainly support that. But I like the option that Krista gave where we, you know, we're not really sure how to move forward. We don't want to give a recommendation one way or the other, but just to allow the tag to, or the building code to do what they think is correct in conjunction with the energy code as it's written.
Thanks, Ally. All right, so I think we have a couple options now. We have, as Krista outlined, an option that we could kind of pass this on to the MVP committee for further discussion, or take an action to recommend approval or rejection of this. So I don't know, does someone want to make a motion for one of those? Bill.
Yeah, I'd like to move, we make no recommendation on this to the full committee with the understanding that we held back because of the energy code.
Okay. All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Laura, thank you. All right, so motion is that the MVP tag will take no opinion on this code change proposal and forward it on for MVP committee discussion. Right. Any further discussion here regarding that? Right. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Right. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, thank you for the good discussion. And we'll be talking about it more, hopefully at the next committee meeting. Okay, so this is GP 107. And looking at the text here, and yeah, there you go, statement from Eric. Looks like the proposed change is written to clarify the language here for this some of the local, like range hood exhaust requirements, and seemingly to identify that either of the options that were in the code are available instead of requiring multiple testing and verification. So like you can kind of see the amended language here, and then if you go back to your 2024 draft, you'd see how it's currently in the code, which would be shall be field tested or field verified in accordance with the procedures below to confirm the model is rated by HBI or AHAM. And this is providing the option to either go with option 1 in the subsection or option 2, and clarifying that those are 2 acceptable pathways, which is supposedly the intent of the code section here. All right. Okay. Any discussion here? Is this making sense to everyone? What's being proposed, or is there any further clarification we think might be needed, or does the existing language make sense? Allie, go ahead.
Would it be possible to explain a little bit about the difference between those 2 requirements, the HVI and the AHAM?
So I believe the first option, so subsection, like the item 1 below this, is allowing for testing and verification of these local exhaust systems. And so then it kind of goes through the procedure and requirements for doing that. And then the second option here is that there's a verification based on HBI or AHAM, which I believe rates these products for operation and performance. And that this section lists the different kind of listing requirements, and so someone could actually look up those products and verify that they are in fact listed with these agencies or directories. And that's that's kind of my elevator pitch. But yeah, Pat or others.
This is Pat Nielsen with Brown Newton. I think the question was, what's the difference between HVI and AHAM?
Oh yeah, thank you.
They're essentially just 2 different certification bodies. If you're a manufacturer, you can choose to get your, range hood certified through AHAM and listed on their certified directory, or you could do the same thing through HVI or AHAM. So they're just saying, go and check at one of those 2 places.
Okay, and sorry, the language is actually clarifying that we're doing field testing or verification.
Correct. I believe that's the intent of the proposed change here.
It looks to me this isn't changing anything. Someone's just trying to clean up the language a little bit, I guess.
Oh.
Okay, Shailesh.
Well, the second option is like a plan review type. You can verify the items or fan or equipment that are listed per certain standards, but no actual test, right, in the field. And that is what the field verification and diagnostic testing, meaning if there is any issues in ductwork or other sizing. This is not about equipment only, it's about the whole system. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I guess Shailesh, to follow up on that, I guess the proposal is taking the intent that either of the pathways are equal and can be applied, but they don't both need to be applied to a project. Are you recommending that you would see it as needing both the certification as well as the field testing?
Well, the first one is better. I don't know about the second one. I don't think that both are required.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's was the goal of the proposal, is to try to better clarify that both of these are not required. Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, this looks just fine to me. You could either do field testing, or you can choose option 2 and do the HVI or the AHAM certified. So I'll go ahead and make a motion to accept the code change proposal as written.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
All right. Thanks, Dave. All right, motion and a second to accept the proposed change as written. Any additional discussion for this one?
This is Pat Nielsen again with Brown. Just
Sure.
to address the other gentleman's comment about, actual installed. So if you choose option 2, it's not just going to HVI or AHAM and saying, okay, this product's certified for, 150 CFM, whatever. It says you also have to look at the duct sizing requirements in that exception. So there's also a table in your code that says, if you're trying to move this much air, your duct size has to be at least X. So there is some, something in there to prevent someone from, putting on a terrible duct installation and having high static pressure and killing the airflow.
Thanks, Pat. That's a good point. All right. Any other comments regarding this? All right. So motion is to accept the proposed changes as shown. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Are there any opposed? All right. Hearing none. Motion carries. Thank you. This is number 10 for GP1 108. So let's see. So statement for this one is that this is clarifying that for occupancy types that do not require an ERV or HRV for the Washington State Energy Code still require whole house ventilation systems that include both supply and exhaust fans. I think Eric had mentioned that there's still some confusion when reading this section, that a whole house ventilation system needs to consist of both supply and exhaust fans and not just one of the two. Right. Okay, so and then the proposed change here is to add bit of language and remove the word integral and replace it with saying with fans providing both supply and exhaust. Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with this code change proposal. I think it's clarifying that the ERBs have both supply and exhaust. Fans is fine, and I would support this code change proposal.
All right, thanks. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious, two things. One for more on the building official side on mechanical. Is there an issue currently with people providing only exhaust or only supply in ERB systems? And the second question would be, if we remove the integral term, will that open it up to system design with remote fans? And is that something we would care about or want to dissuade or discourage?
I guess for the first point, I'm not sure if I don't know if SBCC has received any questions specifically for this, but the proponent Eric has noted that it sounds like anecdotally there's some confusion in the industry regarding how this section applies. So I'm not aware of specific cases where this has been in conflict, but sounds like there still might be some confusion out there. And then I guess for the second point, I think the intent was to make it maybe more general even, and to not prescribe that these systems have to have integral fans, and if you have like a centralized system, you may have a maybe more complex fan system or something that is not integral to the appliance itself. So I guess my opinion would be that it's saying a similar thing, but not limiting it to a certain type of system.
Okay, so you're not seeing any problems with that potential expanded system
yeah,
design? Okay.
I do not, but I'll welcome others' input here. Yeah, so feel free if there's any other comments. Otherwise, also feel free to propose a motion here if we want to move this forward, or otherwise take action.
I can make a motion to accept the code change proposal as is.
All right, thanks, Laura. Is there a second?
Bill here for a second.
All right. Motion and a second to accept the code change proposal as written. Any additional discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the code change proposal as written, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We have about 6 minutes left, and I think we're at the last one, which is one from me. And this might have been one that was not part of the tag discussion, but I submitted on behalf of my professional company. So the proposal here is to add a additional exception to the 403.4 exhaust and supply fan requirements for residential whole house ventilation, where the exception would be that
Sorry, that
no problem. That
oh,
HVI testing would not be required for fans that are integral to a unitary heat pump appliance. So like a PTAC, VTAC, monoblock heat pump at the perimeter that is also has ERV component to it. All right, Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, and I have to admit, when Patrick and I discussed this, which we did, in my mind, I was not quite as focused on this being in the mechanical code as opposed to the energy code. So bear with me. But the first thing I want to say is that you seem to be targeting ERV components in integrated appliances. But as I look at it, we keep talking about fans. But setting that aside, I like the idea that as these types of products are emerging, that there not be a blockage in your code to development of those. And I like that this would allow more consumer choice. And we want to support development of cost and energy efficient integrated appliances, but with appropriate performance and verification requirements. So a couple of thoughts. I know there's at least some integrated systems which actually consist of what would otherwise be a complete standalone ERV that's kind of sit on top of the appliance, might even require external or an external duct to connect with the appliance. And those really could be either lifted off the appliance or not. They could be tested to C439, which is the HVI listing. And so that's what we would really want to see, that when that component, which is more than just ventilation exhaust fans and ventilation supply fans, should be C439 tested and rated in accordance with HVI. And I think that, Patrick, you can confirm, but I believe that this reference to HVI 915, 916, and 920, that does include requirements for certification of ERVs. Am I right about that, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So anyway, I just trying to make an additional proposal and then ask a question or two. When the exchanger portion that's providing the energy recovery ventilation or the energy recovery function is kind of like inextricably tied into the overall appliance and cannot be extracted with its supply and exhaust fans intact for testing to C439. Then there's another certification program available, which is AHRI 1060. And AHRI 1060 certifies just the exchanger. It certifies it for pressure drop. It certifies it for effectiveness at any design point, actually. And so I'm not 100% sure how you would implement that requirement here, but it shouldn't be a burden on manufacturers. Typically, appliance manufacturers are going to be purchasing either an ERV that might already have a C439 rating or listing, or an exchanger. And the manufacturers of the exchangers, who in North America generally do certify to AHRI 1060, they're providing the rating engines. So there's some cost to the manufacturer to just get into the certified directory, but it's not that big a load. So that would be my proposal. which obviously can't be acted on immediately. There'd be a bunch of like sort of work to do to recraft. But you know, the reason, of course, that we're concerned by the prospect that the energy recovery performance of these devices not be certified to any program and not be validated is that it opens the doors to claims that may or may not be at all appropriate. And that's the main thing I want to say. I kind of have some question about, you know, whether the mechanical code or the energy code is going to be taking a look at the energy impacts of requiring the main air handler to provide the ventilation air rather than dedicated supply and exhaust fans in the ERV. And in some cases, that's an issue, some is not. Thanks for listening. I'd be happy to dialogue about it. And and given a bit of time, I'm sure that HVI would try to come up with a more with a position. But right now I'm speaking just for me.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Matthew. And appreciate the comments, and sounds like you're kind of recommending that the manufacturers would be working to get their components and products listed with the appropriate testing agencies that, in your opinion, does seem achievable for them.
I think so. And so somewhere, somehow, you need to get AHRI 1060 in here as well.
And is, I guess, just as inside, is that it would AHRI 1060 be applicable to the fans or just the heat exchange element?
Just the heat exchange.
Okay.
And
yeah,
so
that's where it gets a little tricky here.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, I have to jump off the call here pretty quickly. But I just want to chime in. We have been asked about this specifically for the monoblock and whether or not our jurisdiction requires the HVI requirement for those type heat pump units. You know, having those units be the ERV, the integral ERV, and we have been in the answer that we have been given is that we've been wanting the HVI rating on the exhaust fans, and so you know, I don't know the ins and outs of the, you know, how hard it is for the manufacturers to get that rating, but I would suggest that, you know, we dive into that a little bit more. I'd like to understand that a little bit better, as opposed to just adding an exception. But yeah, we're aware that you know, people have been asking about, you know, is this really a requirement? And you know, I would rather I'd rather research that a little bit more. And you know, I'm not really sure why we can't get that with the heat pump. You know, with that as part of those monoblock units. So anyway, I just would like to suggest that a little bit more research be done before, you know, before going down this path. So just want to chime.
No, I think that's great, and we're over time, so I think it would be good to have this on the agenda for potentially the next meeting, and I can reach out to some manufacturer representatives for some of these appliances, so maybe they could provide a little bit more insight on the manufacturer side of getting these tested at that time. So I guess, Krista, do we need a motion to table this, or can we just kind of leave it on the agenda for the next?
I think because we
meeting?
didn't complete it, we can just leave it on the agenda and it'll automatically move to the next meeting,
Okay, perfect.
which we will try to schedule before the November 8th committee meeting. So
Yes.
we'll reach out to you and see what we can set up.
All right. Great. Thank you. And yeah, any other last comments before we adjourn? Appreciate everyone's time today, and we made really good progress going through the code change proposals. Almost got all of them done, but thanks everyone for work today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Goodbye.